It's inverted again. Look at this, they have more.
Yes, I think I have only one
How many do not have one of these?
You have one?
Here's an extra one.
Is this
Would
yours?
you like one?
This
Right behind you. Okay. You look sure things there'll be more people tonight. Got some extra. Is there anybody with us right now who is not with us for the class before breakfast? Okay. This morning, real quick, review. We spend some time discussing two main ideas. One of those two main ideas was the name and the person named, Nama and Nami. They're 100% the same, although one is in the form of sound and the other is in the form of Satchitananda Vigraha, another kind of form, just like the deity form. It's another form, but it's the same entity. That's a nice Bhakti Siddhanta. Same entity, not a different entity. Abhina, not different. We spent some time discussing that, and we spent some time discussing the mood of the service to the name as the doorway to not mechanical bhakti, but deepening the devotion in our activities of service to Krishna, so that we can come to the stage of real understanding of Krishna. We discussed those two. And there were some exercises which I was requesting you please work on while we're here, and then especially, well, not especially, there's going to be a Namayaga this evening, great time to absorb service mood to the name. And that way, go beyond mechanical chanting or distracted chanting, because we all like service. So, a springboard for entering into this topic was text 7 of Nectar of Instruction. We're going to revisit text 7 of Nectar Instruction again with a slightly different emphasis. So the awakening of Rasa, that was the same introductory slide. And why this title is because relationship with Krishna is everything. Pleasing Krishna in our relationship with Krishna is everything. And when we're in that relationship with Krishna, pleasing Krishna, there's rasa. Nice word. Rasa vai saha. That's Vedic. And saha, that's a pronoun referring to the absolute truth. The absolute truth is rasa. So normally, at least I'm used to normally thinking of rasa as something that we experience. We have a rasa with Krishna. But we have a rasa with Krishna because Krishna is rasa. It's actually Krishna. And each part and parcel of Krishna has a unique, customized, just like snowflakes are all different than other snowflakes. We have a particular, eternal relationship with Krishna and with that particular rasa. So awakening that relationship is awakening rasa with Krishna. And we experience, and that increases Krishna's happiness, or Krishna's increased happiness is our rasa. The goal is pleasing Krishna. And when the pleasing of Krishna is awakened, a nice image is like the white lotus of good fortune expands. Yes, this is Lord Chaitanya's teaching. We're making reference in this image to Lord Chaitanya's teachings. What happens when the chanting of the holy name becomes a little matured, and that auspiciousness that's innate within us, just as we heard Prabhupada speaking, auspiciousness is created by chanting, even if people don't understand. And as that auspiciousness expands, the white lotus of good fortune expands. And that's our recognition of Krishna within the heart, and within everything and everyone becomes more accessible. Now it's notional, and then it becomes more something that's palpable, that you can experience. And it's awakened through the chanting. That's the Yoga Dharma. Is what Lord Chaitanya gave us. The primary means of reaching this higher consciousness place. This is an image I like to use in China, because you're not supposed to use any terminology that sounds religious. It's against the law. And China, there's several phrases. China is a government of law. Without going further in the public forum, you just don't refer to things as people who are religious refer to things. So I refer to the place of higher consciousness. So there's a diagram, the stairway to get to that place of higher consciousness, and it's the stairway of the yoga system. And what's at the other end of that stairway of the yoga system? I don't show that Krishna appearing at the top of the ladder, just the place of higher consciousness, leaving it not filled in, what that place looks like. Because they think it's nirvana. Look at that, it goes into where? Nothingness. Place of higher consciousness, enlightenment, nirvana. But it's actually Krishna, that's the path of yoga. We spent a little bit of time discussing parts of Shikshashtaka given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Specifically, Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote a whole book on how Shikshashtaka is a roadmap. It's like, linguistic GPS how to get to that place of higher consciousness, how to go back to Godhead through the chanting of the holy name. Specific. It's a step-by-step roadmap how to get to Krishna in the highest stages of Braja Prema through the holy name. Bhajana Rahasya is the title of the book. And following Lord Chaitanya, we have Rupa Goswami, and we're focusing on this one verse, or springboarding into our discussion from this one verse. And you can see highlighted in bold letters and underlined is Adarad. So let's chant the verse. Syat Krishna Nama Charita Visitavya Vidya Vito Bhakta Rasanaya Narochikano Kintadarada Vidam Kadusaiva Trishta Sadi Translation: the holy name, character, pastimes and activities of Krishna are all transcendently sweet like sugar candy. Although the tongue of one afflicted by the jaundice of avidya cannot taste anything sweet, it is wonderful that simply by carefully chanting these sweet names every day, a natural relish awakens within his tongue, and his disease is gradually destroyed at the root. Gata Mula Hantri. So, focus, as you can see, is going on. Let's unpack or expand the understanding based upon our acharyas of chanting carefully. So I mentioned this morning, one of my inspirational teachers throughout the whole of my Krishna conscious career has been Purijan Prabhu. And one of the things that Purijan Prabhu did after creating the VIAG is he spent a number of years preparing Bhakti Shastri and then Bhakti Vaibhav. He shared with me that in preparing Bhakti Vaibhav, he would read for 7 or 8 hours every day for months, explaining that he only would start to scratch the surface after 4 hours, 5. Then it was really nectar. And it's not that it wasn't nectar before then, but really things would come out of the Bhagavatam that before that weren't coming out of the Bhagavatam. And every day, and every day, and every day. So then, Bhakti Vaibhav. And now it's taught all over the world, or many places in the world. Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhav. Then came quietly, after Kartik, when everybody had disappeared, went back to their places, along with Satchidananda Swami, quietly, they started another. Now it's a trend. Part of what we're doing right now is japa retreat. And some of you, maybe many of you, because it's not so far away, attended Satchidananda Swami's gathering during Mother's Day weekend this past year, 2018, was on the Holy Name. And after he gave that presentation, he sent out a little publication that was summarizing everything that he presented. And this image is taken straight from that, a little PDF, that one of his devotee artists, the waves of the Holy Name, if you read, see carefully, that waves are embedded in the waves is the Holy Name. And, you know, Andam Dam Bodhi Vardhanam. Enter and plunge into the ocean of Ananda that's accessible through the holy name. And part of what he did, I've captured in the next slide, say themes, and I'm going to touch on a couple of those themes in this class. Towards the very end is this yojana, which has different meanings depending upon application. It's a measurement of distance. According to Sadhguru, it's 8 miles. 1 yojana is 8 miles. But another meaning is alignment. It's how he uses the term. Aligning body, mind, and heart. We're going to touch on this towards the end of this presentation. Then sambandha. So these are parts of, if you want to go more deeply into the holy name, sambandha, or helping to establish a relationship with Krishna, or entering into a relationship with Krishna through his name, establishing a relationship with Krishna's name, Nama Prabhu, sambandha. That's how he uses the word in this particular case. Then seva. We spent some time this morning chanting in a mode of service. And vipralambha. Vipralambha means, our common use of that word is feelings of separation, like when Krishna left Vrindavan, the gopis were feeling vipralambha bhav. Sambhoga is meeting, vipralambha is separation. So vipralambha, he keeps it simple and just the right mood. We heard Prabhupada say, Krishna, please accept me. That's a feeling of, I'm now separate. I don't want to stay separate. I want to be connected with you again. Krishna, please accept me. That's an example of vipralambha, the right mood. And then the fifth is sharanagati. Specifically, it's the final of the 6 categories of surrender. That's atmaniveda, very self-dedicated to Krishna, which is preceded by those other things. And the other 5 of the 6 angas of surrender. So I'm not going to expand on this topic. He did for a whole weekend. I'm going to especially spend some time on this yojana that comes at the end. And chanting in the right mood. There's a nice picture of Krishna and Uddhava. And those of you that have one of these handout copies, you'll find the translation of one of the verses from Krishna's talks with Uddhava. Top of the page, they're not numbered, but maybe we can make more copies of the numbers. 11:47. One who has executed sacrificial performances, Krishna speaking, and pious works for my satisfaction, and who thus worships me with fixed attention, obtains unflinching devotional service unto me. By the excellent quality of his service, such a worshipper obtains realized knowledge of me. Now this is the disciples of Prabhupada, not Prabhupada's purport, but following our acharyas. The first part of the explanation is when sacrificial performances and pious works can mean karmakanda. The explanation here is it doesn't necessarily mean karmakanda, because the higher sense of sacrificial performance and pious works is, the higher kind is bhakti, punya, shravana kirtana, piety that's of the transcendental nature. The highest sacrifice is to chant the holy names of the Lord, and by taking shelter of the Lord's names, one will acquire unflinching devotion and realize knowledge of the absolute truth. A realized devotee is very attentive in his devotional service, taking it as his life and soul. He keeps himself fit for devotional service by constantly worshiping and glorifying the lotus feet of the spiritual master and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such Harinam Kirtan and Guru Puja are the only practical methods by which one can achieve pure devotional service. When Hari Kirtan is expanded, is called Krishna Sankirtan, which should not dry up by performing unauthorized austerities or sacrifices, semicolon. Rather, one should engage with all enthusiasm in the great sacrifice of Sri Krishna Sankirtanam, which enables one to easily achieve the highest perfection of human life. So there's several parts to this purport, which is the entrance into this carefully chanting message of nectar of instruction. Because it's by carefully chanting that the jaundice condition can be removed and a taste for the holy name can be aroused, and then service to the name and realizing Krishna becomes accessible to us. So one image illustrating that, there's Srila Prabhupada on your left. And those who are Rupanugas, or followers of Rupa Goswami, in ISKCON are Prabhupada-nugas, or followers of Prabhupada. We're dependent upon him. And he and his instructions are none different. We can associate with him and be followers of him by hearing and adhering to his instructions. And by so doing, that's this message here in the purport of Guru Puja, or taking shelter of the lotus feet of the spiritual master. For all of us, the primary Shiksha Guru is right there, Srila Prabhupada. For all of this time, that's his position and our relationship with him. He's our principal Shiksha Guru. So we hear his instructions and we bring those instructions in the heart and we live by them as our life and soul. And one who does that, according to Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita purport, that delivers us Vyavasayatmika Buddhi. What's that? Intelligence that's one thing. What's the one thing? Krishna is to be pleased. And that pervades everything. Whatever we do or don't do, that's the one thing that's being fulfilled. Krishna is to be pleased. How do we get to that place? Taking this instructions of the spiritual master, the shiksha of our founder Acharya, as a life and soul. The very important thing is we have to know what his instructions are. Then another important thing is you live by them. Well, before that, you bring it inside, and then you live by them. So this is like, dear devotees, please, every day, carefully read Prabhupada's books. Don't rely on the Brahmanas in the community to read Prabhupada's books, and you look to them so that you know what Prabhupada's instructions are. I mean, you can do that, but don't do that. Each of us should carefully, daily, religiously, faithfully read Prabhupada's books so that the instructions purifies, opens the heart, brings us to that place where the instructions are like, we just live it. And then the door opens. The door of perfection opens. That's this image. And by that, the same message, liberation is a byproduct. We don't aspire for liberation. But Krishna wants to bring us to him, and he'll bring us to him. Now we should want for Krishna to accept us, like this Prabhu that's reaching for Lord Vishnu to come and rescue him. Krishna, please save me. Krishna, please engage me. Krishna, Krishna, please accept me. And then comes this Nama Sankirtan. It was given to us by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates. And here's this image again. You're going to see it a couple more times. By that hearing process. That's how it starts. And that's the middle, and that's the end. One time, at least, what's the goal of chanting? More chanting. Because there's taste. One simply wants more chanting. So this image is meant to show the cyclic succession. And when we're hearing, at the feet of Srila Prabhupada, hearing his teachings, we're hearing a transparent transmission of knowledge from Krishna through the cyclic succession. I'll emphasize this in an anecdotal way. In our Gitanagari farm, there's a gentleman who lives nearby who's a Mormon. And every year when we were conducting retreats in Gitanagari, it just happened to coincide with when the young Mormons would go on tour. You probably know, during a certain age, for 2 years, they just dedicate themselves to missionary work on behalf of the Mormon Church, which is a great program. And if they do so, their whole college education is paid for, because they have tithing, which we don't have. And it's one of the things that the church does, is for those that do the Mormon thing for 2 years, your college education is paid. So one of the things that they do is, aside from going door to door and preach the message of the Mormon Church, they went to visit this, every year, visit this elder in the church who lived not far from Gitanagari, and he brought the youth, 20-year-olds, and a whole group of them to Gitanagari. So one time I had the opportunity to meet with them, because they're not like isolating themselves, they want to feel confidence in the Mormon faith. It's one of the things that they do. So I had this conversation with a little group of them, and they wanted to know, this, how do your teachings come? Because I shared with them when I was growing up a few years ago, I lived in upstate New York, near Syracuse, and I shared with them every year I went to Palmyra, which is in western New York State, and we attended a Mormon pageant, which is in Palmyra, is where Joseph Smith got God's teachings directly, just like Moses got the 10 Commandments from God. Joseph Smith got the whole Mormon teaching from God. So it's up on a mountain, and we went and saw it several times. They went, wow, tell me what it was like. So I told them, there was some connection. Like, cool, this guy's okay. He saw the Mormon pageant. Then I asked, so how do you know, I'm not challenging, I'm just asking, how do you know that the teachings that Joseph Smith received from God is what you're getting today? They never heard that question before. And they said, well, it's because the elders in Salt Lake tell us what the teachings of Joseph Smith are. And I said, okay, how do you know that they got it right? And I suggest you do what I did. I didn't say, evam parampara praptam. I didn't give them the Bhagavad Gita verse. I just explained the principle. That I've taken the time and trouble, not like a super scholar, but they're from the person who I heard from, I've taken the time and trouble to read what his teacher wrote, and 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 what his teacher wrote, to see if there's symmetry in the teachings? Is it the same teachings, or did it get adjusted over time? And I gave them an example. When I was a kid, a few years ago I was a kid, and I read the Bible. And the Bible that I read said, "Thou shalt not kill." And then I went to college and lived some part of my life. And then I read another version of the Bible that says that thou shalt not murder. That somebody did some editing in there. And I did some research. How did that happen? And well, it was because from the time I was a kid, a lot of Asian people came to America and they were vegetarian. They didn't kill animals. So they just edited. You don't, when you take the life of an animal, it's not killing. Excuse me, it's not murder. Killing an animal isn't murder, so it just changed to thou shalt not murder. Ah. And that was just in, 10 years, 12 years. What to speak of hundreds of years. And more than hundreds of years. So how do you know? I suggest take it upon yourselves to read the teachings of the previous elders. And has there been some editing going on here? And make sure you get the version of those elders and not, the edited version of the version of the elders to match what the current people say. I'm not challenging anything. I'm just suggesting this is a responsibility. Because if you don't get the teachings of Joseph Smith, what are you getting? I'm not saying that what Joseph Smith got was not correct. I'm not saying it's correct either. But it's a responsibility. If you're going to sit at the feet of the elders in Salt Lake, you really should know that what you're getting is a transparent transmission. And that's what is in the Bhagavatam 11:47. And it's the same thing with chanting. When we're chanting, the chanting goes to Krishna, but the Via Media is the person who gave us the name. For example, Prahlad. How did Prahlad become Prahlad? By hearing from? Who did he hear from? Narada Muni. Prahlad, little boy Prahlad, when he was in the womb of his mother, who did he hear from? Narada Muni, right. So he says to Lord Srinivas, please don't give me benedictions, because if I get benedictions, it doesn't say it exactly this way, but I become like attached to the benediction and forget Narada Muni. How can I forget Narada Muni? Now, Lord Srinivas wasn't saying forget Narada Muni, just think of me. But I don't want to forget Narada Muni because I owe everything to Narada Muni. If you want, give me Narada Muni's association. When I give you something, give me more of Narada Muni's association. Because through Narada Muni's association, I can learn better how to be in service to you. I can't forget Narada Muni. And Prabhupada said that about his spiritual master. Now he said different things at different times. But I never felt separation from my Guru Maharaj. Sometimes he said he felt separation. And how was that? Because he was carrying his instructions in his heart, and he was always with him, because he was carrying his instructions in his heart. When you're carrying instructions, you're carrying the person. When you're carrying the person, you don't forget the person. That's love. Love and service. That's bhakti. So built into this teaching, specifically in the verse from Krishna, as well as the commentary, the instructions of the spiritual master and the worship of the spiritual master. And it's he who gave us the name. Now, he got the name from somebody, from his spiritual master. But we got the name, or his disciples got the name from him then in turn. So, in ISKCON, we don't forget him. We're eternally and absolutely indebted to him. Now, continuing. on this message of carefully chanting, because that's what Romapada Swami writes. Carefully chanting helps one overcome the avidya condition, which is the root cause of suffering, and ignorance. So if we are attentive, then it's nearly synonymous to carefully, say carefully. How can you carefully chant without being attentive? And so when chanting, which we all do, carefully chanting, it's an adverb. It's the how, going back to this morning's message, why? And we have a clear sense of why, and it makes it easier to do the how. Say negatively. If you don't have a clear sense of why, it's hard to sustain the how. We all have experience. And when that carefully chanting modality is reached, then the taste gradually, through the anartha nivritti process, comes to nishtha, comes to taste. It's not like overnight, but it's a cultivation. Bhakti is a sort of cultivation, Prabhupada writes. That's this anukulyena Krishna Nushilanam phrase. Some of you are from India, looking around the room. And some of you may know of Lord Macaulay. And I'm going to read something that's taken from Lord Macaulay's talks to the Parliament after being sent by the British to go check out India and see how to conquer and keep India controlled. And I'm going to have to read it off the screen. I have traveled across the length and breadth of India, and I have not seen one person who is a beggar, who is a thief. Such wealth I have seen in this country, such high moral values, people of such caliber, that I do not think we would ever conquer this country unless we break the very backbone of this nation, which is her spiritual and cultural heritage. And therefore, I propose that we replace her old and ancient education system, her culture. For if the Indians think that all that is foreign and English is good and greater than their own, they will lose their self-esteem, their natural culture, and they will become what we want them, a truly dominated nation. So if you're a politician, just break culture. Break the value system of the people you're trying to dominate. I mean, I don't know if they had a stenographer keeping record, but this is a document that's available. And therefore, those who read Srila Prabhupada's books carefully come to know Prabhupada did exactly that. So the culture of no culture, I call it. America. Melting pot, that'd be euphemism. No culture, please. I learned this from our neighbors up north of us. Canada has a different value system. It's value of diversity. They don't want to melt everybody into, Americans or Canadians. They value culture. They want people to preserve their culture. And that's if you're Canadian. But if you're American, just melt culture and become the smoothie. Take culture, put it in a big pot, turn it on high speed, and then it comes out, America. Culture of no culture. Breaks the backbone of culture. Now, so the culture can be a problem because people become groupies. This group, that group, the other group, and people fight because you're in a different group. That's another problem. Conception of life. But Prabhupada very clearly is pointing out again and again and again, because the Bhagavatam does, because that's Vyasa's composition, the perils of Kali Yuga. From the very first chapter. So book distribution, and not just distribute the books, but reading the books helps to establish spiritual culture, right? Cultural conquest. And cultural conquest doesn't just mean Bharatanatyam dancing. Cultural conquest means character. That's culture. The first duty of a parent or a teacher, probably a few parents here, is culture. Here's a little Prabhupada story. During Prabhupada's days, he told this story. During his days as a businessman, he visited one man who was a very successful industrialist. And he happened to visit him at a time when he was interviewing two candidates to become in charge of a whole big factory. Quickly, there's details. But the first one had not super credential, but a good guy, and he gave good answers to the questions and so forth. And the next guy had this big resume. Oh, this credential, that credential, rah, rah, rah. And then questions, and he did all right with the questions, and then Prabhupada asked him what was the conclusion. I want the first guy. He said, why? He said, because the second guy didn't close the door. So it's a matter of culture. In America you don't close the door. In India you not only close the door, you lock the door. Even when you're in a room, you lock the door. I don't know why, but it's part of the culture. Anyway, or the first time I saw somebody stand, I was walking through the lobby of some temple, and there's a receptionist, and I walked by, and he stood up. Wow. So, what's that? It's just how I was trained. Pay obeisances is how Prabhupada trained us, but his cultural training was, you stand, just like you walk into a courtroom. And when the judge walks in the chamber, the bailiff says, or the clerk, everyone rise. You know what happens if you don't rise? You're put in jail. You're not only asked to leave the courtroom, you're violating a law. You got to stand to respect the judge. At least that's what I was told. I don't know if anyone ever got put in jail. It's just a cultural item. So culture isn't music and drama and dance and even architecture. It's character. It's first duty. Parenting. And teachers. Then comes other stuff. That's the first duty. So Prabhupada was establishing very clearly cultural aspects right in his purports. Besides, the Siddhanta, there's lots of, for the Western culture of no culture, or the world that's following or imitating at least America, modernity, what's really culture? We learn a lot. Certainly in Ramayana and Mahabharata, we learn a lot about culture. It's just not part of, Harry Potter. or other modern literature. I'm sure this lady's a fantastic writer, otherwise why would she sell so many books? But it's not about culture. Anyway. And for us, the seed of receiving that cultural message from Prabhupada's books and his lectures is the chanting of the holy name. It's a perfect tandem, parallel duet. Prabhupada's books and the holy name. He brought both with him. And in this purport that I read, is keeping the lotus feet of the spiritual master and Krishna in one's heart. Now we know that Krishna is in the heart. But then there are these expressions of, and then Krishna appeared in the heart, means then there's a realization or a palpable sense of Krishna's in the heart. But if you want to get that realization, comes first, or tandem is, the lotus feet of the spiritual master. The lotus feet of the spiritual master, they're luminous. They bring light into the dark heart. There's prayers and verses that express like this. And so along with the chanting of the holy name, that also, according to Rupa Goswami's writing, in his Namastaka, the first of his Namastaka is, the holy name has lotus feet. And the lotus feet have toes. And the toes have tips of the toes of the lotus feet of the holy name. And the effulgent gems of the Vedas, the Upanishads, the effulgent gems are worshipping the tips of the toes of the lotus feet of the holy name. So I tried to capture that image here. And guess who's there? The pure devotees. Not only one, millions and millions. But our primary indebtedness is to one. And that one leads us to the millions and millions. It's a really easy one. A or B. When we go back to Godhead, when that lovely day comes, we go back to Godhead. A, it's just us and Krishna. B, there's us and Krishna in unlimited numbers of living entities, lovingly, joyfully, in all varieties, serving Krishna harmoniously. B. Now how do we practice that? Here. Right in Krishna's teachings to Uddhava. So there's this path to Krishna's lotus feet, and there's one who's inviting us, and teaching us, and training us, and instructing us tirelessly. Inexhaustible energy, even in the final days when his body was a wreck. Who knows how much pain was in Prabhupada's body? And then read his purports. How crystal clear are they? Huh? Do it sometime. Read chapter 13 of Canto 10. Huh? His consciousness was with Krishna. His body was here. His consciousness was with Krishna. Another little Prabhupada story. I've got some nice Prabhupada stories this coming to mind. I wasn't there, but I was told by some devotees that were there. Prabhupada arriving in Los Angeles, and during those days it wasn't TSA, so the devotees could go right to the gate. You know, a few devotees, a few hundred devotees. We went down with some cartels and gongs and flowers and throwing flowers all over the place and boom, 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 boom. And the guard looking at us like, what's with you people? And then, grand reception at the airport, and then he came back to the temple and before the deities and paid his obeisances before the deities, offered his prayers, and then went to his room. Some of you may have been to Los Angeles. His quarters in Los Angeles are not large. They're modest, if not small. The room was packed. I wasn't there. I was told, packed, packed, packed. And then Prabhupada's looking around the room, smiling, and they're all wondering, what's he going to say? So Prabhupada said, I know you're all very attached to me. When I'm in India, you're asking from the devotees in India, what is Prabhupada doing now? Oh, he's in Delhi and he attended a Pandal program, and da-da-da-da-da, and then he went to Japan. And then in Japan he did this, and then he went to Australia, New Zealand, and then he went to Hawaii. So you're hearing all these things. fast forwarding. But I want you all to know I'm always with Krishna. Prabhupada, he died. Because he's always with Krishna. He was serving in this world, but he was always with Krishna. Isn't that, it's cute. He was with Krishna. That's the faith of his faithful followers. And, for example, his Bhaktivedanta purports in the final days of his life prove it. There's many other proofs. And so, we take shelter at his lotus feet. In this purport, it's mentioned, it's Rupa Goswami's teaching, but enthusiasm. Now specifically, we're speaking of enthusiasm in chanting of the holy name. It's part of carefully chanting. You have a pretty fancy dhoti. I like it. Yeah, you're welcome. Okay. Enthusiasm. Another little Prabhupada story. Walking in Brooklyn Prospect Park, kind of in the north central part of the borough of Brooklyn, and walking and walking and walking, and one part of the walking was he walked over by the pond, which was in the park. And as he walked closer to the edge of the pond, all the ducks came over to the edge of the pond where he and the devotees were. And they started doing what ducks do. Quack, 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 quack. And then he turned to somebody, do you have some prasadam? And they gave some prasadam, and they were doing this. And then later on in the walk, Prabhupada asked the question, what did we learn? And everybody looked at everybody and didn't know what Prabhupada was asking. And he then gave this phrase, the duck that quacks the loudest gets the bread. I didn't learn that one until he said it. But it's true. And the enthusiasm to receive Krishna in person through his name helps you connect with Krishna. Or the little birds that don't have feathers yet. They're completely dependent on mommy and daddy bird. And then when the, whatever it is, worm or something comes, they crane their necks and make a loud noise because they're hungry, they're dependent. That mood of dependence is good. It's not bad, it's good. And dependence can be like a negative thing. Materialists don't like that idea. Devotees like that idea because it's real. And when you're dependent, and you're Krishna conscious kind of dependent, you're very enthusiastic. Just like humility and enthusiasm are not stop-go cross signals. Real humility gives impetus for enthusiasm to reach the goal. I need help, help. Or please accept me, or mercy, makes one more enthusiastic in both the endeavor part and the receiving of mercy part. Now in your handout, at the bottom of whatever the page number is, 2.2 from 30, this is speaking of going beyond the mechanical stage of bhakti into the more mature stage of bhakti. The devotees, thus surpassing the gross and subtle forms of covering, enters the plane of egoism. And in that status emerges the material modes of nature, ignorance and passion, in this point of neutralization. and thus reaches egoism and goodness. After this, all egoism is merged into the Mahatattva, and he comes to the point of pure self-realization. Now this is a mechanical process that's being described in chapter 2, but the purport, as you can see, is a long one. And in that long one, Prabhupada is describing not merging your false ego into itself, but the chanting of the holy name. And if you go over another couple pages at the top, he's speaking of the bhakti creeper being nurtured by the hearing process, and specifically hearing and chanting the holy name. By systematic nurturing, the creeper will grow. I'm going to spend some time Prabhupada's teachings on, and our Acharya's teachings on systematic nurturing. Now, one of the sources that I'm not going to take a lot of time on, and that is Harinam Chintamani, which is Lord Chaitanya's discussion with Haridas Thakur, written by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, where they're discussing the holy name. Naturally, Haridas Thakur is discussing the holy name, and Lord Chaitanya wants to hear from him how to perfect the holy name. And one of the essential messages in the perfecting of the holy name is, of course, the qualitative way, not just the numerical way. You don't drop the numerical, but it's not, the essence is not numerical, the essence is quality. Numerical helps. Our 6 Goswamis, they did numerical chanting, and we follow them. We do numerical chanting. But we also want qualitative chanting. So that's a topic that's discussed in Harinam Chintamani. And one of the essential messages in this long purport of this second canto, chapter 2 verse, is the obstacles to qualitative chanting. It's in your handout, you can read it later. It's valuable. This sense of dependency upon Krishna, humble. Trinadapi Sunichena. That's the first. You want taste? Not the material kind, but the spiritual kind of humility. It's not circumstantial, comes and goes. Sometimes humble, sometimes. Cultivate spiritual, genuine spiritual humility. The general spiritual humility is we're dependent. That helps in careful chanting. It helps in spiritual enthusiasm. Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes in Bhakti-loka. Bhakti-loka is a book that details the six principles that help enhance bhakti, 6 principles that destroy bhakti, Shadvir Bhakti Vinashati, Shadvir Bhakti Prasiddhiti. So when he deals with this enthusiasm, in that little chapter, which is a summary of just that one enthusiasm will not sustain unless it's with a spiritual conception. Because the other kind of enthusiasm is passion, and it doesn't sustain. You're chasing after a fruit. That's according to a mature conception, because you're in the mode of passion. And it won't sustain. Say positively. If you want enthusiasm to sustain, you have to have a spiritual conception. How are you going to get a spiritual conception? It's not just by reading books, because we all agree, I'm spirit soul. How do you get a heart that's pure? So it's not just a conception, but you live that way. The holy name. Having faith in the holy name. And the holy name, going back to this morning, is a person. We're serving that person. And that'll get me to this heart that's cleared. So it's not just a conception, it's how I live my life. Well, I'm doing things with my body and my mind, and my intelligence. in service to Krishna. In this long purport, which I invite you to read later, he speaks of the same Gundicha Marjana pastime, the metaphor of planting a seed, Bhaktisiddhanta's purport. And the seed of the bhakti creeper is given by the spiritual master, and the process of hearing and chanting is the watering process. And as you water, it's right in the purport. Weeds also grow. Anybody who's done gardening knows. You plant a garden, water the garden, and weeds grow 10 times faster than what you want to grow. And if you don't do weeding, your garden gets inundated by the weeds. You don't pull the weeds. You have to pull the weeds. It's part of the bhakti process. You have to. You have to be attentive to what's the creeper and what's the weed. Because the watering will also water the weeds. You know, an artist. You know that one. And everybody that's been practicing for a little while knows, oh my God, I'm chanting and I find all this stuff inside that I didn't even know was there. I want to stop chanting. Because I don't like to look at that stuff that's inside. But it happens. You water a garden and the weeds grow. They were there in a seed form. Just there wasn't water. Then you put the water in and the weeds grow. Ooh. Don't panic, that's good. Do some gardening, do some weeding. Oh, it's working. And don't do it once, you do it again, again, again. Anyone that's done gardening, it takes several seasons, growing seasons, to get to where the seeds that were just hanging out in the soil, the seeds become less and less and less, and it becomes less weeding is needed, and more the things that you want to see grow, the tomato or the whatever it is, cucumber, eggplant, something, or flower garden, or whatever it is. You gotta do weeding. It's right in this purport. And the watering process is chanting. Now, another nice reference is described in Kapila Dev's teachings in Devabhuti. Chapter 29 comes after 28. And in 28, 27 and 28, he's discussing devotional service as pure. I mean, pure devotional service. And so, Devabhuti, I'm paraphrasing now, I get it, devotional service is pure. But what about people who are in the modes of nature? Can they still engage in devotional service? And is devotional service mixed with the modes of nature? He says, sure. Real devotional service is pure, but somebody can be, not bhakti becomes moded out, but our modes can color bhakti. So it describes bhakti and ignorance, and then passion, then goodness, and then transcendence. You can look later, chapter 29. And it's connected to the first offense. And this first offense is where your interest, there's that word again, intention or interest, is separate. Until you're a pure devotee, you got separate interest. So Prabhupada uses this phrase, separatist. The Sanskrit terms of Kapila is bhina, drik. Drik has to do with seeing. Bhina means seeing separately. Or pratak, bhava. He just, again, translates it as a separatist. If your interest is separate from Krishna's interest, you're in the modes of nature. I mean, you can be doing bhakti, but it's in the modes of nature. It's going to be mixed. We want to get to the unmixed, right? Hopefully. That's why we're here. And so, here's that image. Krishna's pleasure is everything. We're not there yet, we want to get there. That's the cultivation part. Bhakti is a sort of cultivation. And something that's mentioned in this long purport is worship of Tulsi. Certainly, Haridas Thakur valued Tulsi, and he left the prostitute with his Tulsi to chant the holy name. And Tulsi is the deliverer of mercy. It's right in our prayers. We're asking Tulsi to please make us an eternal maidservant of Radha and Krishna. Tulsi is powerful. Mercy bestower, powerful. And especially is really good with the chanting of the holy name. So those of you that have Tulsi in your home, it's nice where you chant in the presence of Tulsi and be aware Tulsi can help you get to where you want to go. Because she's very merciful. She's the bestower of mercy. In this long purport that you have a copy of, 2230, there's this phrase, systematic nurturing, and Rupa Goswami's term, careful chanting. They're not identical, but they're so much connected. So I'm reminding you of the practical application exercise from this morning. Those of you that weren't with us this morning or didn't look, please do so. I'm emphasizing it repeatedly because it's important. So hearing things again and again, it must be important. Prabhupada did that. Practical application helps us get to the goal. Know what the goal is and get to the goal. And now I'm going to try to finish up quickly, but there's some really nice points. In the back of our Bhagavad Gita, I think it's still there, reference to Ralph Waldo Emerson, and who's the other that studied?
Theodore.
Henry David Thoreau. So here's a little Ralph Waldo Emerson story. You know, he loved Bhagavad Gita. When he was elder, he lived on a farm, and he had a son who was, an adult and so forth. And one evening they were trying to get the cows and the calves back into the barn, milking time. So all of them went back except for one little calf or heifer, and he didn't want to go in the barn. She didn't want to go in the barn. So they got behind the heifer and tried pushing. Wouldn't move, not going anywhere. So they got a rope and put the rope around the neck and pulled and pushed and not going anywhere. A working lady saw them struggle like this, Ralph Waldo Emerson and his son. She smiled. She looked at them, held her finger up in the air. While they were watching, she went over to a bowl of salt, stuck her finger in the bowl of salt, held her finger up in the air, went to the calf, and held the finger right in front of the tongue of the calf, beyond the tongue's reach. The tongue went out, and she moved her finger slightly, and the calf went into the barn. Then she smiled. She turned and went away. So the lesson is, the mind can be very stubborn. And if you try to force the mind, sometimes it can be more stubborn. Kind of like some people I know. But better is to attract than to force. The bhakti principle is better to attract than to force. You want the mind to go to the holy name. Appreciate the mahima, the glories of the holy name. That helps. It doesn't guarantee anything, but it helps. Because if there's something you see is really valuable, your attention goes there. If you're a calf, it's salt. And if you're a bhakta, it's the mercy of the holy name. Now, to get that taste, Lord Chaitanya gives these four, Shikshastika 3, these 4 items. That's helpful. For those not familiar, humility, abject humility, or spiritual humility, not the other kind. Tolerance, not the material kind, the spiritual kind. And offering respect to others, And then this other one, this is probably the most difficult one, is not expecting anything back. Many times I've heard, my mother-in-law, I can't do anything right. I'm never right. I try, and she's always complaining it's not enough. What do I do? Anybody of you who are in the audience or mother-in-laws, don't take offense. Well, without expectation, because the expectation is I'm trying, pat me on the head, at least acknowledge I'm trying. Never enough. Or there's other examples. We'll give some of the other ones. So now, this is this Satchidananda Swami topic of alignment of body, mind, and heart. The body part is easy. I've been asked, it happened in China when I was speaking on this very same topic in China. I was asked, what's the difference between mind and heart? Well, not a whole lot of difference. Obviously there's two words, so they have some differentiation. But in conventional speech, they're often almost interchangeable. But there are obviously some differences. So now we're going to look at Satchidananda Swami's distinction, because he makes this alignment of body, mind, and heart. So here's his language. Alignment of the mind means, this is now right from his little PDF that he sent out after his New Vrindavan visit. And I understand he's coming back again next year. That's nice. He's a great teacher in chanting Romapada. Relinquish thoughts of the past and future and focus on being utterly present. Mindfulness, be in the moment, be here now, be in goodness. That's now. The future is passion and the past is lamentation, or why did it happen that way, I could have done this, why did they say that, etc. Be present. And keep bringing your attention back to hearing the holy names. This is, actually both of these are Borijan's message. He says it in different language, in that japa. Don't despair if the mind still wanders, just learn to catch it and bring it back. It is something one needs to practice relentlessly. That's alignment of mind with the activity, chanting. Morning walk in Hawaii, Srila Prabhupada reiterated the solution. Controlling the mind with encouraging words. What's controlling the mind? You have to chant and hear, that's all. You have to chant with your tongue and hear the sound, that's all. What's the question of the mind? Prabhupada ki jai. That's like a Bhakti Siddhanta message of controlling the mind is with a stick or neglect. This is neglect. Don't listen to your mind, you listen to the sound. What's the problem? Listen to the sound. Make the sound, your tongue, hear the sound with your ear. And then the sound goes into the heart. But if the mind is distraction, that doesn't happen. Align the heart. Simple point. Think about the Lord, whose name you chant. And this is a Hari Bhakti Vilas message also, Sanatana Goswami. When chanting mantra, now it could certainly mean Gayatri mantra, but you be clear, you meditate on the person who is being named. The meaning of the mantra, please engage me in service, or please accept me, the Hare Krishna mantra. But, the person, and access for us, the person whose name we're chanting is Nama Prabhu. Makes it really simple. You don't have to connect this with that. It's just Nama Prabhu. Chant with devotional feelings. Sometimes devotees say, I don't have any feelings. To that I say, well, that's a feeling. And you take that feeling to Krishna. Say, Krishna, I don't have any feelings for your name. That's a feeling. It's sorrow. Take it to Krishna. Or another little, these are just a big part of what I'm intending to do today is to help you with your 32 round day tomorrow. And then those combined is to help you with your chanting next week and thereafter. So these messages, besides interesting, something will hopefully help you tomorrow. Something will go, wow, and resonate. And then apply it. Please. It'll help you, you'll see. So, I was at a japa retreat one time. Japa retreat number 2 that I attended was organized by Purusha Sukta Prabhu. Some persons in this room probably know him. Bhakti Tirtha Swami disciple. Really nice devotee. And he knew that Bhakti Tirtha Swami really liked the idea of senior devotees getting together and doing spiritual activities together rather than just being with subordinates and managing stuff. He really valued it. So Purusha Sukta arranged, but he called a japa retreat for leaders. Some people didn't want to go because they didn't consider themselves to be leaders. But he somehow twisted Jamuna's arm and she came. And I didn't get, that's one of the few times I've had a chance to associate with her. It was really nice. So one of the things that we did during that was in Ojai, California, up on the mountaintop, and beautiful scene, and a Buddhist monastery, really pristine. So one of the topics that we're discussing is chanting with feelings. Niranjan Swami opened up his computer and said, I want to share something with you. In the Ukraine, there's one devotee who was one of our leading book distributors, and something happened. They had an accident or something like that. They were in the hospital. And while they were in the hospital, they couldn't chant. And so they wrote a letter. Paraphrase the letter. Dear Niranjan Maharaj, the good news is I'm able to chant now 8 rounds a day, and I'm really looking forward to the time when I can chant again my 16 rounds. Please accept my apologies, but my circumstances didn't permit chanting. He read, this is not verbatim, but the essence of his reply, don't be in anxiety to return to your 16 rounds. Rather, chant with feeling. Because if you chant with feeling, very quickly you'll return to your 16 rounds. And then there'll be quality rounds. And they'll be from your heart, not just on duty. So, how do you chant with feeling? When you feel that you don't have any feeling, because you're in this mechanical chanting space. Well, I already shared, there's one. I have no feelings. I'm in this mechanical chanting space. I don't like it. Krishna, he already knows, but it's just a relationship. Or whatever it is. Whatever is the feeling, chant with some feeling. It helps. That's aligning the heart. And the heart that's aligned, or when there is a tension, it really means chanting with attachment for the owner of the name. That's Nama gives access to Nami. But actually they're not different. That's what Satchidananda Swami's explanation of this heart, the distinction between heart and mind. And I'd rather when we have questions and answers we don't go too much into that, because it can mean different things to different people. Srila Prabhupada writes in Canto 2, Chapter 3, heart means a feeling of not only self-identity, but a mood of how I regard myself. That's heart. And certainly it leads into how you feel about others and whatever, the community and family members and this and that. But it starts with you and your relationship with Krishna. That's the heart. You can look up that reference later if you like. Now there's two references, one from Rupa Goswami, another from Jiva Goswami. And here's Rupa Goswami's writing from the core verse of Nectar Devotion of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Probably mostly you're familiar with this. Yamilash Shunyam Gyana Karma Janavratam Anakoyena Krishnano Shilanam. It's in big letters. Vakya Uttama. But Jiva Goswami, being a follower of Rupa Goswami, his student and follower, Jiva Goswami wrote commentary on Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu and many other things. And Rupa Goswami's comment is, the highest bhakti is defined as continuous service or emotions directed towards Krishna. Now, we're going to unpack that with the assistance of Jiva Goswami. This is a translation following Jiva Goswami's translation actually, and then here's his commentary. Anushilanam, in that phrase of Rupa Goswami, must be understood only through the sense of its verbal root. I'm not a Sanskrit scholar, maybe some of you have some working knowledge of Sanskrit, but dhatu is how you understand a word, its verbal root. So the verbal root of Anushilanam, the shield, the significance of the verbal root shield is twofold. There's that which is expressing action, this is like what you do, and then there's that which is non-action. That's what you feel. It's not exactly active, it's driving the actions. To be intensely absorbed. The nivriti, atmaka. Shield means to act, practice, to serve, to worship. And mind. Meditate. Because from where the mind is tells you where the legs go. And the rest of the senses. Yes? We're all assembled here. Before we got here, the legs brought us here, there was an idea. Hey, let's go. I'm here for the same reason. You can thank or you can blame Rupa Kishore, because he kind of, in his own special way, invited me more than once. Can you, will you, do a little seminar here at Farmington Hills? And he didn't twist my arm, he just so gentle and warm and cuddly. I said yes. So mind said yes, and then the legs brought me here. So the active part is what the senses do, and the inactive part is what the mind does. And they're both parts of bhakti. Shield has two distinct meanings. One meaning is the non-active samadhi, or contemplation, meditation. The other meaning is active. My dear devotees, Krishna says the same thing. In several places, and one of them that's a very prominent place is the last verse of chapter 6, where Krishna is describing the Uttama form of yoga has these two parts, what the mind does and what the body does. Really quite simple. Madhyatenantaratmana shatavan bhajate yomam. Samayukta tamomataha. What the mind does, what the body does. In the first part of the purport, Prabhupada says, Bhajate is the dhatu of bhakti. Bhakti means practical activity, engaging the senses and objects of the senses with this meditation or absorption in contemplation. I always think of Krishna and engage in your prescribed duty. Notice. Mama nusmara yudhyacha. Another place, same thing. What the mind does and what the body does. So we're meant to engage in our dharma, and we're also meant to absorb our mind in Krishna. And that's what Shil means. Krishna, Anu means following. Following who? Following the perfected devotees. Following Rupa Goswami, who's following Lord Chaitanya. And the line following Rupa Goswami, following Srila Prabhupada, our immediate instructor, Acharya. But anyway, for all ISKCON members, fix our mind on him and take his instructions and bring it inside and live accordingly. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur glosses the same Rupa Goswami teaching. The inactive sense of the root Shil takes the form of cultivation. Exactly Prabhupada's language in the introduction to Nectar Devotion, which is a summary of what Anushilana means. The form of cultivation, which uses emotions of joy and sorrow in the mind. So then there's this sorrow that says, oh, I'm chanting mechanically. That's an emotion. Take that to Krishna. Place it at his feet. I feel disconnected from you. Like that same message, remember, I'm broken, I don't think I can be fixed. Krishna saying, that's okay, I accept you, just hear me. Wow, Krishna's very kind. I'm this, broken personality, and Krishna's accepting me. I'm unqualified, that's okay. Take the holy name anyway, and become happy. Chant to be happy, right? Now, another way of looking at this alignment topic is to change our culture from material to spiritual. So changing a culture, I don't know, some of you are in the corporate world or the sociology world, but this phrase, a paradigm shift, is a popular one these days, or it's sometimes called cultural engineering. So here's an ILS topic. This is straight from Kaunteya Prabhu, using iceberg as an example of culture. So those who study culture and cultural engineering and paradigm shifts, there's behaviors, that's the staying at the top. Behaviors, symbols, like a cross or a crescent or whatever it is, some symbol that inspires people in a certain way. Anything that comes in touch with your senses. But below the tip of the iceberg is values that those symbols or those behaviors represent, because values are what you hold to be important. Your beliefs, your mission statement, that's our or my personal value. And then underlying those are the unspoken assumptions. Like, deep down inside, what's really important to you? Generally, we're too busy being successful to ask that question. But it's a really important question because everything else rests upon it. Deeply held beliefs. So, supposing we have a deeply held belief that says, this is what I did in college. There's a higher reality. I don't know what it is, and I know that I don't know what it is, and I want to know what it is. People are living their lives in a way that I don't want to live like that. There must be a place where people feel like I feel, and they live a different way of life than this one. I don't know where it is, but I want to find it. I want to be there. It's like, it was really, not at all what it looked like kind of thing. But it's a deeply held conviction. And I want to know. And the good thing is, I knew I didn't know. And I didn't meet anybody who did know either. I met lots of people who said they think they know, or they're pretending to know. Adanta Gopir, Vishatam Tamishram. Those kind of people. Blind leading the blind. So ask yourself. Don't ask somebody else to ask for you. Or don't just ask them, what should be my deepest held assumptions? Ask yourself. It's not easy. You have to keep going deeper and deeper and deeper. It's really good. It's kind of painful because then when you realize, gee, I don't even know. That's an uncomfortable feeling. But better that you know that you don't know than you think that you know. And live your whole life at the end of the conveyor belt. This is a phrase, I don't want to be at the end of the conveyor belt of life and I still don't know. When I speak in college audiences, I say, if you don't hear anything else, hear this one thing. Don't be at the end of the conveyor belt of life and you still don't know. Because you're too busy being successful to ask your deepest held convictions and who you really are and all those core fundamental questions. That's just for cultural change. Prabhupada was helping us through his books to get there. Part of it was peeling back, illusion. Happiness through fruitive activity. That's a big one. Big, that mode of passion. This is Madhye Tishtanti Rajasa. Right? Language of Bhagavad Gita. Urdvam Gachanti Sattvasta. Madhye Tishtanti Rajasa. Adhu Gachanti Tamasa. And passion leads to ignorance. Goes down. So we're this is the place of fruitive activity. That's what this Bhu Mandala is. In the structure of the universe, that's where we are. Place of passion. And passion means fruitive activity. So I'll just say it once instead of 5 times. It's worth to say it 5 times. Prabhupada said, one of the primary instructions, one of the primary duties of a spiritual master is to thoroughly instruct his disciple in the abject futility of finding happiness through fruitive activities. How many times did Prabhupada say that? A gazillion. Why did he repeat it over and over again? Because that's our thing. And even in bhakti, it's fruitive activities. Kijai. Read it in the Bhagavatam. Canto 3, chapter 29. So beneath all of that is, at least if there's going to be a transformation of alignment, asking these questions are really important. Referring again, we're almost done. Here's Lord Macaulay, break the backbone of India, its cultural value through education. Trash India and its reliance upon spirituality. Everything's Indian is backwards, everything. England is good. And then Gandhi had to come along and say, no, the other way around. And China does the same thing. From my visit to China, and I can be careful in the public assembly to not say too much. But it's something that's an explicit strategy They want to restore Chinese culture because the industrial kaboom that has taken place in China that changed the agricultural economy of the country for centuries, not just decades, is now something else. And there's prosperity in people that are in this prosperous mood. They're leaving behind their culture. So wisely, the Chinese government wants to preserve culture, because otherwise it's going to be, America number 2. No, they don't want that. So they have systems like controls, but they also intelligently are promoting traditional Chinese culture. It's smart. Now, the end of that traditional Chinese culture isn't Krishna, but it's culture that helps preserve something of sanity and stability within society. Therefore, Krishna consciousness also needs this culture, this, using Satchidananda Swami's phrase, this alignment of body, mind, and heart. So that's one of the 5 topics of going more deeply or having more effective chanting. Srila Prabhupada ki. So, I think I did it again, I talked too much. But we have some time for questions. We keep within the schedule. Let me see if there's somebody that hasn't raised a question that would like to, because there's already a hand up and I can rely on her for several questions. Yes.
Maharaj, you spoke about deeply held beliefs.
Keep speaking.
Yeah. So the question is, even if I feel I don't know, there is this sense that the path is not clear. And unless we receive mercy, it's not something that we can know.
That's good. It's good that you don't know. It's good that you know you don't know.
But it looks like sometimes there's like, I wouldn't say impatience, but...
Well, it's okay. Be patient. I mean, it's better to be patient. But at least the impatience is I want to know. I know I don't know, and I want to know. No. Passion isn't going to help you to know. Goodness is going to help you. And then what will help you remain patient is this question that Schubert was asking. You have confidence in the bhakti process. I don't know. I know that I don't know. I know that I'm following the process that will help me get there. Therefore, I'm feeling secure, even I don't know yet. Well, there's different stages of all of that. I described one when I was a new devotee. I don't know if I'm going to do this for the rest of my life, but it sure makes a lot of sense. It makes more sense than anything else I've come across, and I came across a lot of stuff. It makes more sense than anything else. So I'm going to do it for a while and see where it goes. I don't know. I feel confidence in the process. I'm open. I would say to people, like, do bhakti and Sankirtan. If you got something better, let me know. And let me tell you what this is, and you should have the same willingness. If it's something better than what you know, take it up. That wasn't a challenge. This is a kid talking as kids talk. Okay?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. The verse from Rupa Goswami that you gave us, I wanted to share a comment and then hear you riff on that.
Text 7 or this Nectar Devotion one?
Anushilanam.
Okay.
And in my own experience, devotees sometimes avoid emotions that are coming up in their life, referencing that particular text, that our feelings or effort towards Krishna should be without desire for anything else. And so there's an assumption that all emotions that come up are desires for something related to karma and jnana, something material or mundane. So that's a bit of a comment, and the question would be to understand how to discern between the two, or is it that, as you said, or what you were maybe indicating, that whatever emotion is coming up, offer that to Krishna with that fundamental knowledge that eventually it should come to a place of only desiring His pleasure?
Well, the starting point is, in almost certainty, we're mixed. So your question was how to discern between the two. And before I can start discerning between the two, I need to acknowledge there's a mix. There's something that's for the pleasure of Krishna, and there's something that's, not for the pleasure, well, at least for my pleasure. My pleasure means body or mind, generally, or, ego, gross and subtle body. So that's to start with self-honesty, and then be patient in discerning, is it this or that? Because something that will help me discern whether it's this or that is strive for those things that I do know are pleasing to Krishna and for His pleasure, ultimately, and take up those activities, and it's going to help me. Let's just take one example of book distribution. Anybody that's done book distribution knows that there's a fruitive element. And that fruitive element inspires one and also does the opposite. It's what we called in early days causeless unwillingness. Before I take my bead bag, I put my book bag and go out to meet people. Then it takes a while to get over that, because I'm fruitive and I know people, they didn't wake up in the morning thinking, gee, I hope I meet a Hare Krishna God. I mean, there are situations, but... So we're stepping into people's bubble and having them smile and say, yes, I want something that I had no idea before my life intersected with you that I was going to be meeting you and going to say yes. So it's against the flow of material activity and material momentum. So there's, devotees that do book distribution learn humility pretty quick. And the real humility is, this is just a service. I'm an instrument of our disciplic succession, specifically an instrument of our founder, Acharya. These are his teachings. And he's especially empowered. I'm this little guy, given an opportunity of service to introduce people I don't know, just like Prabhupada introduced people he didn't know to Shuddha Bhakti. Some people said yes. And I feel real, so I'm going to be there to create the opportunity for people who, at least they can say yes or no. But otherwise they don't have an opportunity. So that's a nimitta function, it's a service function. And the more that I can stay in that service mood, whether they say yes or no, or get out of here, or get a job, or, let me think about it, or whatever the response is, the whole spectrum of response. My goal is not get a result, my goal is to be an instrument of Krishna. Now there's results, but it's not pleasing to Krishna only if there's some yeses. Pleasing to Krishna that I'm trying to be His instrument. That's the spiritual conception. So to the degree where they're in a spiritual conception, that's a spiritual desire. And the degree that we're not in the spiritual conception is some kind of other mix. that's, how am I going to discern that? Which was your question. You need a heart that's pure, otherwise you're going to see with material lens, whatever it is. I wish that my heart become pure. And then I can really know whether it's this or that. Material or spiritual motivation, to what degree, which parts is material, what parts. That's just a fundamental. And then guidance of scripture, guidance of those who are guiding me, because they know me in a way that I, with my material filters, can't see myself. So I value having someone that knows me well, that doesn't want to control me, they want to help me. They're a friend. A well-wisher. It can be a peer, a superior combination. But I value those relationships. That's another way to discern. And when they say, whatever they say, you don't go, ouch. You don't necessarily just blindly say, yeah, you have some dialogue. Because it's a relationship. Because there may be something going on that they're not aware of, and vice versa. So that relationship really helps us discern correctly. For those who are trustworthy, that's special. Let me become trustworthy. That's special too. Anyway, so those are some how you discern, and then the second half was.
I'll be a little presumptuous and say that maybe many of us have been preoccupied with this discernment, but what I was getting from from your description and discussion earlier was that maybe the more important thing is to just recognize the emotion and then bring it to Krishna.
Yeah. Yes. And that relationship with Krishna, if we go to Krishna with stuff, whatever it is, He's the source of remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. He will give us the ability to discern when we're getting wise feedback or someone's missing a target. We're relying upon Krishna. So he already knows the relationship of taking those feelings or inspirations or whatever they are and placing them at Krishna's feet. And of course, the Guru Krishna. That's because that's built into the verse and purport for today. Yeah.
Maharaj, continuation to that question.
In relation to that question.
Yeah, we understand we have a mixed up feelings, which are mostly material.
Mix of modes of nature operating in our life.
So, but at the same time, we may consider it for granted. We don't take any action to purify these desires. So, how do we, have this kind of a determination after identifying that these are all material desires?
Biggest one is association. That's our experience, and that's the teaching of Kapila Devi Devahuti. How to is through association. How to overcome being stuck. That's her question, beginning of chapter 25. Sadhu Sangha. Sadhu Sangha has different elements. And how do we recognize a sadhu, and what do you do with a sadhu, and what's on the other end of Sadhu Sangha? It's like, nice description. But just saying in one phrase, it's Sadhu Sangha. Then there has to be a regard for such persons. That the heart has to be open, not just hang out. Open the heart. It takes some time because our hearts are a little hard sometimes, guarded, defensive. Again, when we're not really trying, so how do you go beyond not really trying? The heart has to soften. Okay. Question over here. Oh, behind you.
Maharaj, Maharaj, in the alignment of what he said, thinking of the Lord whose name you chant. Maharaj, actually, no, I was told initially, when we think Krishna, we are bringing him forcefully into our consciousness, which is wrong. I was told initially. Because when we chant, Shravanam and Kirtanam happen nicely, then automatically Smaranam happens,
Yes.
then Krishna will come automatically. But I was told we should not forcefully let Krishna come like that.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. He's not obliged. He's not. You could just stomp your little foot when Krishna's supposed to respond. Yeah, forcefully. Like a little child that's throwing a tantrum. Not like that. But eagerness. That's good. Not forcefully, but eagerly. In the mood of a servant was eager for association with the master. That's fine.
But then attentive chanting means chanting with attachment to the owner of the holy name. And actually this he told under chanting with feelings.
Well, this is Sachinandan Swami speak. I'm just repeating what he said because it's his phrase.
So my question was, in a neophyte stage, where especially Anardhanavritti stage, what type of attachment we can keep to the owner of the holy name?
What kind of attachment? Service. Like me, you like service. It's really simple. Connect that I like service to the name.
No, I thought actually, Santa, Dasya, Sakshat, not level, but service.
Yeah, service.
And the third point, Maharaj, focus on being present, give up the thoughts of past and future. So, that is in the alignment of mind. My question is, it is our endeavor or Krishna's mercy or both?
Both.
Means we try, and only when Krishna's mercy comes, then we'll be able to be present in the present.
Yeah. Just ask Shubha. That was our discussion before. One last question over here because it's time to end.
This question is on mood of dependence, and I'm kind of trying to differentiate between emotional dependence and mood of dependence. That there is a sense of emotional dependence that happens which is circumstantial, which is like whenever you feel helpless, you feel dependent, and then you have this sense of reaching out. But the moment that circumstance wanes off, then the dependence also wanes off. So that is not the mood of dependence, that is more like a mental platform. And then for chanting also we have this hills and valleys, but the mood of dependence remains consistent. It's not that it's only in the valleys, but it's even at the hill the mood of dependence is still there.
Yeah.
How do one cultivate that kind of mood of dependence?
Sadhu Sangha. I'll end with this because it's 1 o'clock. We're going to keep our schedule. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, there's a long section, he's instructing Sanatana Goswami. And in one particular place, he's describing the totality of living entities and then gradations of living entities, and then some become devotees. Then he explains that become a devotee one requires sadhusanga, then a lot of verses. Then he states, even in the most advanced stages of bhakti, sadhusanga is essential. It's a mood, not just an event. a circumstantial creating, I'm hankering for sadhusanga event, and then everything gets nice and... Otherwise, it's impersonal, it's material and or impersonal. So the sustained is the mood of dependence, not circumstantially. Not like 4 types of pious people, but we have to go beyond those 4 types to render devotional service consistently. And that is, there's another goal besides those 4, and that is whatever you want, whatever is your personal intention or sankalpa. I want to be restored in my relationship with Krishna. And to do that, I must make some endeavor, and I'm dependent on mercy. It's not just circumstantial. Now the connection is made, I go. I become complacent again. Not so. Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. Small announcement. So as per the schedule, we have Kirtan with Raga Band at 3:30, then 4 o'clock Gauri Damodar Stotra by Satarupa Dev.